It's nice having them around.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're going to camp, like, you know, they're not really around.
This is one more added thing in the
It's just-
morning.
yeah.
You gotta factor in. Guess we'll start it up here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you.
I have to say that's an appropriate thing to do on Flag Day.
Oh, that's right.
Hey, what can I say? The timing was right. Would you please do a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson,
Here?
Commissioner Jennings,
Here.
Commissioner Minotti,
Here?
Chair Geeson Fields.
Present. All right. So our next item up is ex parte communication.
Yeah, so this is a new feature of our agenda, and some of the surrounding jurisdictions in our area do this. Basically, this is an opportunity for the commission to disclose if they have had any communication with applicants on any pending or forthcoming projects. So some meetings, this may not really be applicable. Other meetings, there may be something to disclose.
I've had communications with Howard McNenny on a project at 727 Cornell. So, and when and if it comes to commission, I'll need to recuse myself anyway because it's within 500 feet of property that I own.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Donaldson. And could you please note that Commissioner Kent is here too?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Okay, are there any other ex parte communication disclosures anybody like to make? No? Okay. With that, I will close that item and move on to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine and/or administerial. Thus, everything on the consent calendar will be considered by a single vote of the commission. A consent calendar item may be pulled and discussed separately if someone from the audience or a commissioner chooses to do so. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing no one, I'm going to turn it back to the commission. Are there any commissioners who'd like to pull an item from tonight's consent calendar?
I had one correction on there, unless you already caught that one.
Is this for the meeting
Was
minutes?
it the meeting minutes and your email? Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
I would like to pull out, I have a question on one, I'm trying to take up the number.
Yeah, and I actually would like to ask a question of the applicant for PA 17-030, 726 Madison. And I hate to do this, but I'm also going to pull planning application 17-036, the design review amendment at 806 Curtis. And there, honestly, there's really kind of brief comments. I don't necessarily need a full presentation of the project, if that's okay with the other commissioners.
And I'm assuming, I think Commissioner Kent and Commissioner Jennings had a
Mine's
item?
on Curtis, my question's on
Curtis.
Curtis, yeah.
Okay.
Which one? Curtis. 806 Curtis?
Yes.
Okay.
and yes, I believe I had a question on that as well. I did have a question on 726 Madison that I emailed staff about, and then I also had a comment on the minutes that might be what
And the minutes, huh?
Commissioner Minotti had as well.
Okay. We can, are the minutes, would you like to actually pull them to go through them, or have they been?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, we
pull
can
if
listen
we can
to.
just pull it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
and-
Okay.
It should be quick.
So the only thing left on the consent calendar,
10 Jackson is left.
that is correct. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the remaining item on the consent calendar, 810 Jackson, which is planning application 17-030.
Okay.
Second?
There's been a motion to be seconded, and a correction, I believe that's planning application 17-029. Is that correct?
Oops.
For A10
Oh,
Jackson.
you're right, you're right.
Okay,
That's
there's
right.
there's been a motion.
Planning application 17029, correct.
Okay, wonderful. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, if you're here for that project, A10 Jackson, your project has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, so do not make any definitive moves and wait until that 14 days is over before you move forward with the project. Thank you. If you like, we can start with the meeting minutes from May
that would be great.
24th.
Sure. So my question / comment was on the meeting minutes regarding item 6. I believe that Commissioner Minotti voted no with me on that one instead of Commissioner Kent.
Yeah, I had the same comment.
Okay.
That was the same comment, yeah.
Good.
And I had nothing else.
Okay. Unless there are any other corrections or edits that a commissioner would like to make, I will make a motion to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes of May 24th, 2017, with the noted correction that Commissioner Jennings mentioned.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting minutes have been approved. The next item up is planning application 17-030, design review for single-story addition at 726 Madison. I'll just start off. If any of the commissioners like, we can do a full presentation. Otherwise, I just have a few kind of comments I'd like to make to the applicant, or I guess to get on the record.
Yeah, I'll leave it at the pleasure of the commission. But the project architect is here. If you would like, we can have him come to the podium and have him answer questions.
Sounds great.
I don't need a presentation.
Okay.
No, I don't either.
And you're free to make a presentation to the commission if you like. This is my own personal take, so take it for a grain of salt. I don't think it's necessary. I think we're familiar, and then we might have some specific questions to ask of you. I guess if you will, I'll just a couple clarifications I'd like to make. I know in the staff report it referenced that a previous design had been approved, and so I guess I just want to clarify some of those points in the sense that I think when it was discussed in the commission, for specifically the driveway entrance, although there is, I think, an 8-foot curb cut, I think my intention when reviewing that was that the hardscape, the beginning of the hardscape would be limited to 8 feet and then expand out rather than it coming to like a 16 or whatever 20 foot at the sidewalk. And part of that is given that I don't think you necessarily need all of that parking space to meet code. So was that, and then just a friendly suggestion was that although I like that you're adding some space for parking in the front, the curvilinear form for me, didn't seem to go with the house. And so maybe if it's become sort of a rectilinear outline or something of that nature. So those are my, I guess, initial comments. If there's anything else commissioners would like to add or questions.
I had a couple of questions and minor comments that might be more appropriately directed at staff. One that I had emailed staff about was just confirming the current size of the house and then the size of the house after the addition, because I thought I saw a couple of discrepancies between the staff report and the plan. So did you want to speak to that?
I'd be happy to clarify.
Okay, thanks.
And just so that you have some background, this was reviewed by the commission September of last year, and it was a much larger addition. And upon receiving your email, we realized that the old square footage, which was included in this project summary, which was done in error, that also resulted in different numbers being generated for the table here. And typically when we calculate FAR, we grant a deduction for covered parking and stairs. So the number that we derived was based on the deduction for the garage, which is 242 square feet, of which 220 square feet can be deducted, and then the stairs, which was calculated at 30 square feet. So that resulted in a 250 square foot deduction.
And that number is the number that's reflected in
In the staff report.
the staff report. So 1872
1872
is the resulting, but that's not the actual size of the house. That's the after
footprint for the FAR.
For the FAR. Okay. Yeah, and I didn't have any concerns about that, or with the FAR limit. I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about. And then my other question is, I was just hoping you could confirm that the parking exception that was previously approved can transfer over to the new design.
That's correct.
With
When parking exceptions are approved by the commission, they run with the land. So if a modified scope comes back, that parking exception still remains valid.
Okay, and it's the same characteristics that were approved for the exception before? Okay. Yeah, I didn't have anything else. Thanks.
I have a comment, same, just on Eric's, was that, yeah, the width of the driveway doesn't fit the curb cut, so it would kind of encourage people to cut over the planting strip there, which would kind of be a messy, muddy mess. You might back out over it, but you wouldn't drive in. So one or the other, for me, either the driveway apron gets wider or the driveway narrower, so whatever works. Can you get 2 cars in there if you narrow it? Might not fit.
I don't know. Do you know? I'm sorry. I'm speaking to the applicant now. When you were doing the layout of that front parking area, do you know how tight it is in terms of to fit 2 cars?
It'll definitely have a lot less of an impact. And we can do it to be sure. I think we can reduce it, still have the 2 parkings.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to eliminate the ability to park 2 cars in there.
Great.
But, yeah, so what you need to do to make it 2 cars and narrow it as much as possible and
Yeah.
still not drive over the planting strip is the goal, right?
Yeah.
I seem to have some vague recollection that when we looked at this last summer, there was a condition of approval that would give them some flexibility to expand the driveway curb cut,
I thought so,
provided
too.
it didn't result in a loss of on-street parking.
That's right, I remember
I
that
think
too.
that's right,
Yeah.
yeah. And that would be my concern, yeah. Yeah. I think the way it's configured is you could drive 1 car into the garage, and then you'd have ample space left to pull a second car in and be able to still back the garaged car out. And that's the way I kind of looked at it. I said, oh, okay, I see, it looks like it works to me. But I think that was an issue. We wouldn't, if you widen the curb cut, we don't want to lose an on-street parking space. And that requires the city engineer to make a determination on that.
So, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Maybe as a condition for approval, we could just have that the applicant work with staff to either determine a wider curb cut that doesn't eliminate a parking space, or in the alternative, a reduction of the hardscape so that it, at least at the sidewalk, it matches that 8-foot curb cut. I guess, and similar to Commissioner Kent, I kind of just have this fear that somebody might park there and then just, like cut over the grass or the sidewalk. So, I don't know, those are 2 suggestions I would
Okay.
make if the commissioners
Okay.
are open to it. Do that. I guess I'll make a motion then, unless anybody has.
Please
any other
do.
questions.
You can.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve planning application 17-036, design review amendment for second story addition at 806 Curtis, with the additional condition.
Wait, this is Madison.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wrong one.
I'm sorry.
030.
Yes, I'm sorry. Clarification, okay. Motion to approve planning application 030, design review for a single-story rear addition at 726 Madison, with the additional condition that the driveway design be revised, and this be done with staff and the applicant, be revised to either accommodate a larger curb cut without eliminating an existing on-street parking space, or in the alternative, a reduction of the hardscape to match the curb cut dimensions at the sidewalk.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, your project has been approved with that additional condition. There is, thank you, there is a 14-day appeal period, so don't make any permanent moves or decisions until after then. Thank you. And, excuse me, our next item up is planning application 17-0036, design review amendment for a second-story addition at 806 Curtis.
So just very briefly, this project was approved by the commission last summer. Originally, it was approved with this addition at the front of the home and a two-level addition at the rear of the home. The applicants got pretty far along the building permit plan check process and got hit with some pretty significant construction cost estimates. And so as a result, they've revised the scope to eliminate that rear addition entirely, and instead they're going to focus on the front of the home. But as part of that, they're also adjusting the roof line, and it adds about 20 square feet. But it is an addition on the upper level, so we brought it to you since it's a second-story addition.
Okay, thank you. Again, since this is a consent calendar item, if the commission indulges me, we can keep this somewhat informal. If there's a commissioner who'd like to start with any comments or...
Yeah, I guess I wasn't clear what the changes were. It seems like the drawings here are all proposed, there's no existing, and there's no, and from what the existing plan was to what was proposed last summer to what is proposed now, I'm not clear on what the changes are.
Bear with me for just a moment while we hold this up.
And I see the applicant's representative here, and so we might call you up to either answer some questions or help clarify something for us. And if you'd like to, you're free to make a presentation about the project.
All right, I'm in the hot seat. So compared to what you saw from last year, originally there was an addition that was proposed and approved for the rear of the home. That is no longer on the site plan. Part of the previously approved scope of work included this addition at the front of the home, this shaded area here, and it's effectively an expansion of a bedroom, and then there's going to be interior reconfiguring to accommodate a bathroom, so that serves as a master suite. This projection area at the front is the addition that's part of this application scope, this projection here.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So when it says in the staff report that it's a 20 square foot addition, it's more than that relative to the actual existing, but the 20 square feet is the new addition?
20 square feet is the new addition
Okay,
from
thank you.
the previous application.
Okay.
It's not even a net 20, because we lopped off 2 stories of addition on that. It's not even a net 20.
Right, so overall.
If you may, Jason,
Just
Yeah.
for the
please.
front, yeah.
Way smaller.
Jason called us for Oz and Rudy. Yeah, the addition on the back is a net reduction of, I think I summarized it in my letter.
200 plus square feet.
Yeah, we lopped off a bunch of square footage on 2 levels. And then the net change to the front, it takes form in 2 ways. One is the net 20 that Ann is referring to, which extended the portion of the bedroom that we previously proposed. We dragged it about 3 feet more towards the street, still using the cantilevered method so that we didn't have to have a column in the driveway, still with the same arching buttressed support. But we added a teeny little bit of roof area. It doesn't count as floor area because there is no new floor area that's associated with it, but we increased the roof area in this area here, right up there. Okay. To allow for a proper amount of head height for a stair that rises up to separately access the front bedroom. The trick that we did was previously we were using the existing stair to access the remodeled and added area. Because of how the money got reallocated, we had to put the bathroom in the back of the house on the upper floor in an area that was previously used as a closet. And then the 2 bedrooms, well, there was a bedroom in the back. Instead of having the bedroom in the back, now we're going to have a bedroom all the way to the front. And there's an existing middle bedroom that we're preserving. And you couldn't get to the new front bedroom without making a half flight of stairs. And I have done exactly the front of this at 822 Pomona. And I referenced that in my cover letter and realized until about 6:35 p.m. tonight that I hadn't sent you pictures of that, so you could really see exactly what it is we're asking to do. But if Ann looks at her email, she would see some pictures. Google Earth shows 822 Pomona, and it really shows this very, very small little bit of roof area change. It's nested, as I said, it's nested above this broken line right there. It's nested that way, so it fills in this little gray here that has the skylight in it and has the designation. This little part that says 3 feet addition. That part is just a vertical addition over the existing roof, resulting in no new floor area. But it gets us the head height that we need to gain access to that bedroom separately. And that shows up in the plan. If you want to burrow in on the plan, you'll be able to figure it out. But it's a little jewel box complicated thing. We did it before, and it was nice to have another opportunity to do it. Because we solved all the technical problems once before, including things like, the clearance below the curving arch for vehicles.
And that's,
Experience counts, right?
Yes.
I'm glad you bring that up, Jason, because that's my concern, was just that looking at the drawings, I guess, and I just want to get on the record your reassurance, because when I look at the drawings and the projects, how it's located on the site, it seems very difficult for a car to actually navigate into the garage.
Yes.
And make it a usable parking space.
So it's interesting. There are 11 of these houses, 11 or 12 of these houses in Albany, that are exactly this plan with exactly this weird sort of slide-by driveway and a little bite in to go to a garage door. So there are 12 of these. They're I don't know what you call 12 of a kind. There's a TV show for that. But what we are counting on and what exists is paving to the property line. Normally, we have a little planting strip or something along the property line, but this project and this property has paving to the property line. So we actually have to kind of hug the property line in order to make the first approach, and then we swing in.
Okay.
Yeah. And as I said, this is not the guinea pig. The guinea pig has already been done, and I apologize that I didn't send Ann a really good street photo of 822 Pomona, but
We put it up there.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's in the shadow. I can't show you the arch and the driveway part of it, but it actually does work. Most people, honestly, they bring their car into the driveway past the sidewalk line and they kind of leave it there. But it is passable and it is achievable.
Okay.
I think on the construction documents, we noted a 6'8" clearance that was 7.5 or 8 feet wide to the property line, so that we knew we'd had a kind of a zone to drive through.
Okay, I see that noted on the drawings. Yeah, I mean, I guess that was my concern, was that I just want to make sure that it is physically actually doable to use the garage for parking space, because God forbid, I mean, if the owners sell this and I don't want somebody to buy it thinking they have a to code usable parking space, only to find out that it's
right. The measurement was taken at the front line of the building. The driveway actually drives down a little bit, so there's actually more clearance later. But it's kind of like those parking structures. If you can't fit in at the front, you're not going to fit in at the back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, and that was my main concern, really, was just the cantilever arch and access to the driveway, or to the garage for the parking space. Were there any other comments or questions about the project?
No, that satisfied my question.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then
All right.
I'll move approval of, let me make sure I get down, 17036, planning application, design review amendment for second-story addition at 806 Curtis.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, your project has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, so please do not make any permanent decisions or moves until that 14-day appeal period is over. Thank you. And our next item up is the public comment period. The public comment period is available for anyone desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Under the Brown Act, the commission is only able to receive your comments since the item has not been agendized. Therefore, such items will be referred to staff for their comments and may be included in a future commission agenda for a full discussion. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address the commission on an item that's not on our agenda? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and move on to our next action item. And if staff would like to give us a presentation.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is study session and design review and variance for single-story addition, rear addition at 1123 Key Route. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 2,689 square foot lot with an existing 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 965 square foot home built in 1938. The only city record we found was that a re-roofing permit was issued in December of 1995. Here's the street view of the property as it looks today. Project request. The applicant is interested in pursuing a design review and variance application for a single-story addition at the rear of the home. The proposed addition is 183 square feet and will accommodate a new bedroom. A formal application has not yet been filed pending preliminary commission review. Variance. The applicant is seeking a variance to allow the proposed addition to encroach into the required rear setback area. The proposed setback is 15 feet 4 inches where 20 feet is required. The subject site lacks standard dimensions and is trapezoid in shape. Due to this condition, the allowable building footprint expansion is very limited and would result in a triangular shaped addition. There is also a rear yard sewer easement which is 5 feet 1 inches from the rear property line. And here's the APN map that shows properties in the vicinity as well as 1123 Key Route, and you can see the diagonal line cutting through all the properties there. And so this is essentially what the applicant is filing for, the variance. You can see the standard setback area at the top arrow and what that would be the compliant setback area, whereas the bottom arrow shows the proposed setback that the applicant is possibly pursuing. Given the substandard size of the lot and the rear yard sewer easement, the unique site characteristics create an extraordinary circumstance that prevents code-compliant expansion of the property. Draft variance findings are provided in the staff report. And here's the existing rear elevation, and this is the proposed rear elevation. Note that the rear addition has a flat roof. That roof in the back is the existing roof. And a new awning window is also proposed in addition to the French doors and the additional new window off the back. Parking. The subject property provides one off-street parking space in the attached single-car garage. The proposed addition does not trigger additional off-street parking for the property. No neighbor correspondences have been received. The project is categorically exempt from SEQA. And staff recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission review the proposed plans and provide feedback to the applicant and staff. If there is preliminary support for the variance, the applicant will file a formal application. That's it.
Are there any questions of staff about this project?
Sure, I think I have one initially. Have you calculated what the rear yard square footage would be? How much open space would they have left, in the rear yard if the addition were approved, encroaching, into the setback?
We can,
You'd have
We
to
can do a quick
guesstimate it,
calculation.
or do it, I know.
it would be a pretty modest, it would be 15.4 by, I think it's 36 at the rear. so-
36 is the lot width, then?
Yeah, so it would be a pretty tight backyard.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, there's also a 5-foot sewer easement at the back of the property, which also precludes any construction.
And that wouldn't, the sewer easement's not really going to be affected. in one way or
It's,
another?
it's not a factor, but it's also another hardship on the property.
Right.
Where typically most properties in Albany have sewer access facing the street. This is one of the unusual properties where the access is in the rear.
The sewer access is in the rear, oh, yeah, right, right, right. Yep, got it. Okay.
While Chris is calculating that, kind of a general question is, do you know the history of that block and if there were any other parcels that were granted a variance?
I don't know that offhand, but that's certainly something that we can look at and follow up with you.
Okay. Just,
We've done similar things around Posen, I know that, where there's couple of strange
Yeah,
lots.
this was
Pablo's
reminiscent of the Posen application where they had a sewer easement in the backyard and then they had a 16-foot sidewalk width. So that really limited what could be built on the property. And that was also, wasn't quite a trapezoid, but it was close to a trapezoid shape.
Yep, yep.
and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to amplify that. I was also curious about whether there were any neighboring variances. There was sort of a reference in the staff report to the fact that there may have been other very similar variances or exceptions granted in the area, and I would just be curious to find out what the precedent has been.
Yeah, we haven't, in my time here, I don't think we've had anything on those 1,100 blocks of key route. I'm certainly happy, though, to do some research beyond my time here. I can tell you, though, most recently, I think the last two that we had were this one on Posen with the sewer and the sidewalk issues. The other one would be 1267 Washington, which had a substandard
right.
lot depth.
That was quite similar, wasn't it? Yeah, right.
And one of the other reasons why I'm asking too is just when I'm looking at the applicant's drawings, they have a parcel diagram with their neighbors. And if I were to take that as accurate, it looks like the property to the south isn't in compliance with the setbacks, although it's a slightly smaller lot. But
Notice
It
that, yeah.
actually looks like all four of that house is to the south,
Right.
I mean, but they're probably grandfathered from when
They're probably
Yeah.
grandfathered in, they're built in the 30s, and
Yeah.
there wasn't any 20-foot rear yard setback requirement then, yeah.
yeah,
So, well, I'd like to ask the applicants if they consider going up rather than back. I think that's, I need to know a little bit about that before I can sort of make the variance findings, I think.
Yeah.
To me, that's the important question.
are there any other questions of staff?
Just a quick follow-up to Doug's question regarding the rear yard space. We calculated approximately a 550 square foot rear yard, so it's pretty modest, but
It's modest, but it's, so if you had a multifamily dwelling, you would probably require 200 square foot open space, private open space. I
Yeah.
can't remember if we had
That's-
rules in that.
sounds
along
about
that line
right.
Or not, but this is in excess of that.
If there are there any other questions of staff about the project? If not, I will ask the applicant to come and present their project to the commission. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just basically kind of explaining maybe the reasoning behind it or the logic behind the design. And I think, as you may have heard, there was a commissioner's question about going up versus out.
Yeah, okay. My name is Amy Giang. I'm the designer for this project. And as far as going up, it was an expense concern. And the addition is very, very modest. And one thing that Christopher didn't mention is that the lot coverage percentage and the FAR is way under what is allowed, even though we're encroaching into the rear yard setback. So, the lot is just so small that there, we chose to do less than 200 square feet. There isn't even a bathroom in this addition. It's just to make it a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home that's suitable for a family with 2 children. I don't think we can get much smaller. And one of the things that Christopher mentioned is that if we were to comply with the rear yard setback, not only are we getting an odd trapezoidal-shaped room that follows the setback, but it doesn't comply with the 7-foot minimum room dimension in either direction. If we could do that, we could get a room that complies, but it would involve cutting into the back bedroom and chopping, creating 2 new rooms and chopping one of them to get, 9 feet or 7 feet at the addition. So I'm happy to present the project. Do you have the drawings?
We can pull up the drawings, but I don't know if any commissioners have other questions for the project designer.
Are there any other questions?
I have one question. The architect is listed as 1121 Key Room. Is that
Yeah.
your address?
Yes.
So you're a neighbor?
The next door.
Yes, I am.
Next door neighbor.
Yes.
I know, I noticed that too. Oh, that's nice.
So, and also I want to address the neighborhood and the neighbors. At my house, the one to the north, we made an addition 9 years ago, and we did comply with the setback. And I tried to show on the one of these diagrams
Yeah, there's a
how much further the 1121 key route sticks towards the back.
Yeah.
And then I believe you, Ms. Jennings, mentioned that the house to the south is actually protruding further than my client's home. And so, I understand that maybe the house to the south might be predating a 20-foot yard setback, but it's just, I think that variances have exceptions for very unusual circumstances, and this certainly is one. And I don't think it's very fair that they should have to go up to comply with a set of circumstances that don't really work for this trapezoidal-shaped lot. So yeah, the house towards the north is quite a bit larger than even the proposed house. And then I also just have some data about the lot size. This lot is 2689. The house to the north is 400 square feet larger. That is, the property is 3094. The property to the south, maybe I don't have that, but I did point out the typical lot size on the block is 3,900. So 3,900 compared to 2,689. And yet, even with the lot size, we are well below the lot coverage in FAR. What is it?
I think your FAR is only at 0.43.
Yeah.
43%.
0.43.
No, that's the FAR. It's 0.43.
But I think it would be the same because it's a single
Because it's
story.
single story, yeah.
0.43, yeah.
43%. And what is the existing?
37%.
I had one question, which, and I understand the constraints, the expense of going up instead of going out. And I also understand the need to have legally compliant room sizes. But I'm curious, just looking at the addition, I mean, did you look at least trying to have that corner, the corner and the upper, I don't know which way we're pointed here. I guess it's the northeast corner. Is there any way to have it, have at least that corner comply with the setback so that, at the farthest point from the lot line, you're actually, you are complying with that setback and still have a legally compliant room?
In the northeast corner?
Yeah. Is that something you looked at?
Well, if you see where the line is, the 20-foot line, which is, right there. That's, I think, around 9 feet. So yes, that would be in compliant, but here's what happened. I was speaking with Anne, and when we were looking at, if we did in compliance, it's a 9 feet out to the furthest point, trapezoidal shape addition. And when we were talking about needing to get a variance to have a rectangular shaped room, we thought, well, we're already encroaching into the setback. And then we're going to get for spending all that money, a 9 feet wide room. And I just think that would be hard to justify spending tens of thousands of dollars and then not having a room that's really adequate. So it was considered.
I mean, how much, what's the difference between how it's shown on the plans and the size of the room that's shown on the plans and the size of the room if you did just move that line so that the corner complied? And I'm not talking trapezoidal, I'm just...
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't have a scale with me, so unfortunately I'm not sure, but I think it's about 18 inches. I'd have to check on my computer.
I mean, I think I understand Commissioner Jennings' intention, and I'm just thinking out loud right now that if we were to sort of, if that corner was pushed back, the 18 inches or whatever it is, you could maybe split that difference with the adjacent bedroom.
Well, one problem with the adjacent bedroom is that this is a split-level house, and all the rooms on the north side of the lot are 24 or 30 inches higher because the garage is underneath in the front. So all the rooms on the north are higher, and then the rooms on the south are low, and the addition is going to be low to lessen the impact on the yard and the rear yard neighbors. So we're doing everything we can to kind of keep it down. As a matter of fact, that's...
Are you going to have a ramp going up? I didn't see stairs. Were there stairs there?
The access to the new room will be from the kitchen that's at that level. So it will be lower, it'll be the same level as the south rooms.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no ramp or stairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not so concerned about the corner, whether it encroaches the northeast corner, whether it encroaches into the 20-foot setback or not by a few inches or 18 inches. I guess I'm more concerned about whether we can make the variance findings and the policy involved in that. To what extent the economics come in here, and I don't know if we have any good guidance on that. I think clearly it might be hard to make the findings when we know that there's airspace here and that they could stay within the setbacks and go up. But I believe you when you say that would be much more expensive. I'm sure it would be. And so the hard part for me in making the findings is whether that's an appropriate hardship or whether the hardship involved should be should be attached to the, associated with the land.
One thing I just want to point out is, even if they were to go up, they have a non-conforming south wall, so that would get into conditional use permit territory to extend a non-conforming.
The side yard is too small. Then.
Yeah, so
okay.
they would need to have a 3-foot, 5-inch side yard setback, and they only have, I think it's,
Okay.
it's 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, maybe, I'm sorry, I think that is conforming.
Well, I really like that I'm happy that the lot coverage will still be very reasonable and would still be very reasonable. And to me, that says that there's ample private open space on the site remaining for the family to use. And it certainly more than conforms with our minimum requirements. Yeah. And I think that's why we have a rear yard setback, is so we make sure we have ample private open space available. So.
Couple questions.
But I still have to look at I would still have to look at the findings hard and see, well, can I really make them? And, staff has written the findings, a draft of the findings anyway. And I don't think I have any problems with those, but I'm still debating myself whether they go far enough.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I'll just say to piggyback off that, Doug, is that I guess if I were to go by the letter of the law, I would have a tough time finding, number 2, preservation of property rights, given, as you said, that they can go up versus out.
Yeah.
But in terms of the other findings that staff has written up, 1, for unique site characteristics, 3, no special privilege, and 4, adverse impacts, I'm okay with supporting those findings.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would suggest that I think it would make it easier to make the findings if we did have a little bit more information about the standards that have been applied to similarly situated properties in Albany, just, to have a basis for comparison, and, potentially some more information. I realize that, the project probably hasn't gone out to bid or anything. You haven't even gotten an approval, but if you have an order of magnitude about, the hardship that would be imposed by being required to go up instead of out. Again, just thinking about information that would make it easier to make the findings. And for me, I do think, I note that it doesn't appear that there's a required finding that you're conforming to the maximum extent practicable, but for me, I do think it would make it easier for myself to make the findings if I knew that at least part of the, at least you were trying to comply with that, 20-foot setback.
At one corner.
Yeah, and so that's, this is a study session, and I'm not taking a hard line on that, but it's just something to think about.
So hardship is not considered.
No, it is.
I think it relates to the preservation of property rights.
Yeah.
And,
But we do look at the hardship in terms of the hardships created by the site characteristics, like the required easement for the
sewer.
The fact that it is a uniquely small lot size, and it's not rectilinear in the sense of being a rectangular site. It's trapezoidal in shape. So we do take all of those into consideration. And then, as Commissioner Jennings referred to, we also look at the historical precedent and if anybody else has been provided such a variance. I do think that something that might help you if this were to come to us for an actual review for approval would be to either include in the staff report or information, as Commissioner Jennings says beautifully, anything that goes to the order of magnitude of the financial hardship to go up in terms of added structurals that may be needed, the fact that one of the existing walls is non-conforming and so it would require an extension of a non-conforming wall. Things of that nature, I think, would help us to just be able to, basically we have to agree to findings that say, these conditions are met, which would allow the variance. And so I think kind of taking those into consideration and maybe just sort of expressly somehow including them in the project might help.
Okay.
And I believe Commissioner
To my recollection, the project on Washington,
Yeah, I was going to mention
had,
that was a situation that the property lacked the standard depth of 100 feet. I think it had a
yeah.
depth overall of about 65 feet, and the commission approved a variance to allow a 5-foot rear yard setback,
right.
which is,
But very narrow, very narrow.
Yeah,
And
considerabably more impactful than the 15-foot.
and they could
setback.
potentially have gone up, but there were family and health reasons.
There were accessibility
why they couldn't,
issues
why they didn't
for
want to.
keeping it level in.
Yeah. And we approved it.
So
And I think
I'm
we
not sure
approved it.
how the sewer line is restricting anything.
I think it just limits or prohibits any construction above the easement of the sewer, which is the.
So you couldn't put an accessory building back there? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You would not be
Okay.
able to put an accessory structure or an ADU within that, 0 to 0 to 6 inch or 3-foot setback, since it's a 5-foot easement.
And I guess you have to be
Right, well, that's
prepared to have the city come in and repair a leak and something like that. That happens, doesn't it?
It happens. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but that's why that
That's why
easement
it's there.
exists.
Yeah.
So if they didn't have that sewer easement back there, they could put an accessory building in the back that's still, you know.
Right.
Create space.
And they
Create
could
space,
still, if the addition was not up for discussion, and they were going to pursue an ADU or an accessory building, they could put it in the rear yard. It would be relatively small because of the easement, and not being able to site it close to the property line. And then they would also have to maintain the 6-foot clearance from the main house.
Right.
I'm sorry, do what? I
They would
missed.
have to maintain the 6-foot clearance from the main house.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, for an accessory building, yeah.
Sorry, just the other issue is the privacy. I mean, the reason why we have the setback, I assume, is create open space, but also for, if everybody obeys that, everybody agrees to that, we have a certain amount of privacy that from the abutting neighbors. Would it be more private if you went up, you're looking down, or as opposed to horizontal? So there is, I'm not sure if, in your defense, I'm not sure going horizontally is probably less impact on the
It's
privacy.
less impactful for sure. All of our neighbors that share the rear yard area,
But it doesn't preclude the future use going up, and then you have a double whammy, right? Now you've
Yeah.
impact here, and then you go up again, so.
Yeah,
well, I will say, personally speaking, as a neighbor to the north, I would prefer that they go in the back. And
Sure.
when the previous owner passed away, we knew that whoever moved in might do that, and we actually, we would be greatly impacted.
yeah. Yeah, there's one 2-story house down, a couple of one on that block, or near that one. There's one tall house there, I think, that's gone up, but most of them haven't.
I'm sorry, I hope I'm not interrupting you. I just realized that we've kind of sort of melded into the discussion phase. So unless there are any specific questions of the applicant, and unless you would like to present anything else of the project, I'm going to open it up to the public. Would you like to tell us anything else about the project?
Well, I'd like to address Mr. Donaldson's comments about going up. I don't know what a design review process is like for a second-story addition that isn't well integrated with the existing house. But I do see a lot of additions around town that are 1 or 2 pop-up rooms in the back that are just functional. But personally, I think they're not very attractive. And the program for my clients is to add 1 bedroom and maybe a bath, but even that was, people live differently. And some need more than others. And these folks, they just want 1 more room. And to go up to build 1 more room, I think is going to look really funny. And then to make it look good, I would be adding a square footage that they don't want. And that is excessive. That's not living simply. So that's what I would like to present as an argument for understanding that the lot really is quite unusual. I mean, just from one to the next, as you go south, it's getting tinier and tinier.
Correct, yeah.
And I thought our lot was small. So the good thing is that we did tape out where it was, and the owners feel comfortable with how much space there is. I was proposing maybe going out a little bit more to the north as well, because we're 1'6" from the north property line, and I was saying let's push it that way and get more, and they didn't want to. So I think that their choices are conservative. So I'm hoping that people can understand the unusual lot circumstances.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, I will now open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission on this project? Seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a full discussion of suggestions. Thank you.
I had a, can you pull up the Google Maps of the neighborhood from above, just so we can see this building in context of the other ones?
Do you want the aerial or the street view?
The area. So I wanted to go to the one of the points you made on the findings, number 2, the preservation of property rights. And I guess I want to just understand people's interpretation of that. The first line goes, it says, the chapter deprives such property of privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity and under identical zoning classification. So I guess a question is, does that only apply, that statement only apply to people who are coming in for permits to expand, or does it actually also apply to kind of the existing conditions based on properties that are already grandfathered, and what's our interpretation of that? Can you come from above, like more directly above?
I'm going to say maybe a 2D view.
Yeah. I just think that, I mean, if, just looking at the neighboring properties to the south.
And the subject property is the 4th building from the right? Is that right? This
Where
one,
the
right?
cursor is?
That the,
That one there, yeah. No, that one there.
this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, what is written in the staff report, it says, such property of, deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity and under identical zoning classification. So I guess one question for us, does that only apply when somebody comes in a permit, or is it within the context of what the built form is currently? I'm not sure I have an opinion on that, but it seems to be important when you look at the surrounding
Well,
properties.
it's a finding for a variance, so we only have to make that finding when you're dealing with a variance. And so it's saying that it is such a unique property that, how can I say this, that the privileges that someone else might have if they had a normal property, i.e. a square lot or a larger lot, then that if you strictly applied the standard conditions to this lot, then they wouldn't be able to build a rear addition, whereas the next door neighbor to the north could, which is true. And so I think that's why the finding. You see what I mean? A strict if you hold to the if we hold to the setback lines strictly on this parcel, then you wouldn't be able to make the small addition. But the house to the north and the one to the north of that and the one to the north of that would be able to, because they have a much deeper yard because of the way the lots are laid out.
So I think I can read this a couple of different ways and, perhaps get to the same result. But I don't think that the intent would be to, when we're talking about privileges enjoyed by other property, I don't think that's intended to create a baseline of, non-conforming uses. So I don't know whether any of these structures are legal non-conforming, but I don't think the intent of, variance findings is generally to, create a sort of a way to get yourself a legal non-conforming use or structure. On the other hand, I think there's just sort of a fairness argument about, what does it mean to have a property on that has a funky shape like this, and that regardless of the size of the lot, it is going to constrain your ability to construct in one way or another. And I'm again, I'm just really curious about the history, and I know we may not have lots of examples to go off of, but any other variances that have been granted under the current code, I think, would be really instructive.
What comes to mind is, if you did a variance here, so the lot to the north of it, they're an undersized lot in comparison to the lots above them.
Yeah.
And it's just a chain reaction.
Yeah.
So what,
Exactly.
going back to your point, fairness, at what point,
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be reflected in the cost of the lot? If you buy a very small lot, it costs less than a larger lot. And so if a large lot comes with the ability to do additions, that should all be reflected in the price or the value of the lot. So it seems, yeah, I'm doing exactly the same jumps in my mind, because I have the same situation. I have a lot that has an angled back with a sewer setback. But it's a much longer lot, so this issue doesn't bother me as far as putting an addition on it. But, I mean, it was, if I wanted to go into that addition, into that setback, I mean, could I pull this variance up and say, you know, it was done here?
Well, that's why we have to be careful with variances.
Right.
And if we grant this one, we would be saying that the rest of the lots, there's 3 more lots till you get up to the corner of Santa Fe, would probably be eligible for the same kind of variance, because they get even smaller
Yeah.
till you get to the corner, which then it's a huge lot.
But it looks like they already encroach into that 20-foot setback.
It does look like they were built that way.
Yeah.
So they're grandfathered in.
Yeah, so I guess,
Good point.
And then they would also-
I see you there. I
Yeah,
hear
if they
you.
were to expand, particularly if they were going to go up, it would be a use permit to extend a non-conforming wall rather
It
than a
would be.
variance.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
sorry, on this property, which one was the non-conforming wall? That one, it wasn't quite clear to me.
Maybe the south.
Did you say this
Is it
property had?
the southern wall, you said, is it that it's in the?
Oh, you know what, I think after looking at that a little more closely, that was an error.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is no non-conforming wall.
Yeah, the walls, I think there's a 4-foot setback on the north side and a 3-foot 11-inch setback on the
It looked like-
4 feet is required?
3.5.
Oh, so they're okay.
Yeah.
It did look, though, like they, I mean, this isn't affected by their request, but it looked to me like it's non-conforming based on the front setback, is that right? It's 9.4 and it's required 15, so, I mean, there's already some.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, again, they're not proposing to change anything there, but I'm just curious.
I thought that house was way back.
It's just what's in the staff report.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you're right, it's a 13-foot 4.5-inch front yard setback from the property line.
Okay. Yeah. It's tight, it's a small lot. So, you know, I would love to be able to say yes and grant it, and I'd like to be able to do it. Because I think they should be allowed to make this addition. But it's not an easy call for me. It's still a hard one. Because it's a variance, and we shouldn't be in the habit of granting variances regularly or frequently. You know, I think that's the way I always thought about variances. They're really a special thing. They really
And I would say-
require a pretty high level of justification.
In general, I would say we look at no more than 1, maybe 2 maximum per calendar year. It is something that in general we do discourage property owners from applying for, because there really has to be some hardship with the property that precludes.
But this is consistent and a very similar situation to the ones we've granted in the last couple of years. I mean, with a very strange lot configuration.
So technically, you could put an addition back here that was 6 feet away from the building. So you could still fill that area up with the house, with the unit, and not encroach on the sewer setback. It'd be all the same, right? The same amount of square footage building. The only difference would be it wouldn't be connected to the house.
So you're talking about an accessory building.
Yeah. So in fact, the same
Yeah, but
size
that's-
addition could be done.
It's like a completely different
Well, it's
thing.
not really completely different. You could make it into a bedroom, accessory building.
What's the setback for accessory?
It could be to the property,
Is that right?
It would have to be a 6-foot clearance from the main
the
house.
building, but it could be up against the property line. So you
You have
can't
to have
go
a
over.
6-foot separation between the
Right,
two
and they have
structures.
that. They could do a 6-foot separation and still put the building there.
But, well, and maybe that's a question for the applicant that they could either address now or another time, but is an accessory structure, attractive in any way, or does it meet any of your objectives, or would it just,
Well, let me continue my train of thought.
yeah, please.
So, I mean, maybe there's something where the lot's a certain width, that 6 foot is somehow, maybe the lot is less than whatever size this is, 70 feet. That 6 foot separation between the accessory building and the regular house is waived. So if you still get the addition, but we're not wasting that space.
And this came up on the Washington discussion that we had last November, where the commission was struggling to come to a conclusion, and one thing that was highlighted was that you could effectively take the same amount of square footage, construct it as a detached accessory building, and it wouldn't even be in the commission's purview to look at that.
Oh, yeah.
The argument could have been made that where you would have a 0 to 6 inch setback or a 3 foot setback, you could argue there'd be more impacts to
Yeah.
adjacent properties with privacy, loss of light, that type of thing.
Yeah, but no, I think I'd rather have an attached building with a complete,
Yeah.
a backyard that's
I think
all
so.
one, rather
That's
than,
what I mean.
rather than broken up into little pathways around
Well, I
it.
agree, but if we don't do the variance, then they could just, they were pushing
Right.
them towards that other option, which isn't as good
Yeah.
architecturally. So that's the problem.
I'll just wrap up by saying that I'm supportive of, I think this is a modest addition, and it's going to be a modest sized house in any case. And I don't think there are, well, I am curious how many kind of trapezoidal properties there are in Albany, or, kind of similarly situated
There's more than you
properties, but-
think.
Yeah, more than you think. Well, okay.
I'm always
But-
surprised. We get calls sometimes on random parcels, and it's clearly predates the Subdivision Map Act, and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I would just say that, I would encourage the applicant to work with staff to try to develop some of the information that will, look really closely at what the findings are that we're being asked to make, and make sure you're providing all the information that's needed so that we could make those findings. And, considering some of the other comments you've heard tonight.
I mean, I guess my kind of 2 cents I'll just quickly throw in is, I agree with a lot of what has been said. I guess I would like to know if staff's ever able to find out, I guess, kind of the history of these six buildings, because it appears that these 4 don't conform to our current code requirements, and maybe they're just simply grandfathered in.
Yeah, there's a possibility. We certainly would have a minimal amount of permit information on our Laserfish system.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take a look through there to see.
That would be great. I mean, just for my own reference, I'd like to know if it was sort of just, if they were grandfathered in, and then, to me, that kind of brings up the question, or a couple of questions of, it would be unfortunate that this variance wouldn't be approved simply because the zoning codes were changed, at some point, sort of irrespective of when that house was built. But then at the same time, it also begs the question of, well, maybe, I mean, why did they make those zoning codes? And maybe it was to sort of prevent this type of variance. So I don't know, I guess I would just like to know the history of those buildings. And for me, that kind of rings as sort of similar situations as a gauge. But otherwise, in terms of the design of the addition, I think it's a very modest design, and I have no problem with the aesthetics of the addition. And I think, as was said earlier, I think just sort of working with staff to make sure that they can give us enough sort of substantive facts to go for to support the findings would, I think, help a lot of us. And I think a lot of it's there. It just has to be kind of finessed out. And so, yeah, those are kind of my thoughts about it.
A couple of questions now that you have this map up. That apartment building's right over the sewer easement, and there looks like there are a few additions that are on the sewer easement too, if you go up the line a little bit, or accessory buildings. So, and they look fairly recent.
Chris, we don't know where the sewer easement goes.
The sewer easement runs
may
right
turn-
down the,
It may turn and come out to one of those streets right there, I bet it does.
Oh, okay, so you.
I wouldn't be surprised,
You're right.
Yeah.
And then just random thoughts I'll throw out there too. You mentioned earlier, Commissioner Kent, about sort of getting a double bang for their buck if they expand out, and then it leaves the opportunity to expand up. So something we could do is include a deed restriction if it's within our power to maybe prohibit building at the second story on any part of the building that's not conforming to the setbacks, so that basically they can't build over that part that's within the, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I follow you there.
That might be a good, that might be a real good suggestion, yeah. In other words, don't compound the variance, the encroachment, yeah.
And it might be that if that's done, you waive the ability to have an accessory building,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, you wouldn't have room,
Yeah.
but another lot might.
Yeah. Well, my position on it really is, I'm a real nice guy, and I'd really like to grant this, but it is an issue. It really calls up questions for me about the variance findings, which I think are tough to make, and that we shouldn't be making them very often. We shouldn't do too many of them. We shouldn't get in the habit of doing too many of them, and we should have good reasons when we have them. And I think we could be vulnerable to criticism. It might be hard to defend the variance because you always have the option of going up. But I don't think anyone's going to challenge this variance finding, so it's probably going to be right here with this commission, and that'll be done with it. That'll be the end of it. So I would like to really grant it, but I still think it's we're going to have some real good reasons to support the findings, I think.
Yeah. Any other comments?
I concur with a lot that's been said, so nothing new to add.
Okay.
I think several of us have mentioned that item 2, with preservation of property rights, for me was a tough sell. I didn't buy into that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the final last that I'll say is maybe to help try to reach that goal of finding number 2 is, although financial hardship isn't necessarily a end-all be-all, but maybe looking at it in terms of structural, because if you were to, have to put in some kind of moment frame to support the second structure, and then the changes in the aesthetics of the building possibly, I don't know, just all of these things kind of taking into account if they apply.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess with that, unless there are any other.
Yeah, I know. We like the idea of rear additions that don't change the street view. That's a good thing, I think. We all like that. Doesn't change the way that, but yeah, anyway.
Okay. Unless there are any other comments, I guess that's it. And hopefully we were able to give you enough feedback to help you make a decision, whether to move forward or whatever it may be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item up is new business. Zoning code amendments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do we want to do Orange Theory Fitness first?
Oh.
Because we've had people waiting.
Sure.
You want to do
Sure.
that? Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will.
Is that okay with staff?
That's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because they've been waiting patiently, so.
No, that's
Zoning code discussion isn't the most exciting.
that is a great suggestion. So we will postpone item 8, new business, for after this, and we will move to item number 9, announcements, communications, discussions, starting with 9-2, Orange Theory Fitness.
So this is just a quickie announcement, and we can open it up for public comment. But at the last couple of meetings, Mr. Garner and his family have been here to address the commission on concerns and ongoing issues related to noise compliance with Orange Theory Fitness, and they have been impacted by that noise on a very regular basis. And you, as the commission, in looking at the conditions of approval, have the right to call this a use permit up for a compliance review at any time. In order to do that, though, we had to formally put it on the agenda for your discussion, also take public comment, and then should you decide to do that, you could do so this evening, and we could bring it back to you as
Okay.
part of a compliance review.
Okay.
And quick question. When was the application approved originally for Orange Theory Fitness, and how long has it been?
So Orange Theory Fitness, this is a really odd one. It's the applicant actually appealed it to the city council over the operating hours. So it was approved by the city council July 6th of last year, but they had the construction took quite a while, so they didn't actually become operational, I believe, until, it was April? March, April. So they were under construction for a while before they commenced operations.
Okay, so it opened in March for business? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question, and just, how do we actually bootstrap that to get it on the agenda? Is this calendar to actually take an action to put it on the agenda?
Yeah.
It's you directing staff
If
to
we want.
agendize it for a
Yeah.
future discussion item,
I'd like to
or
get a...
future action item on the use permit
Maybe we could open
review.
the public hearing, and
Yeah.
maybe we can get a report or an update on what, if anything's been happening lately, and then, then decide from there whether we want to review the use permit.
Would you like to address the commission on this topic?
Well, they've been.
Hey, I'm sorry.
You should come to the microphone so you can be on TV.
I think they've been trying to stop the noise. They just installed heavier mats today. They were supposed to be installed over the weekend. Things seem to be taking a long time to get done. Okay? We complain on a regular basis, and I copy Ann. Sometimes it can go weeks before we get a reply back from them as far as what they're trying to do to it to resolve the noise. They say they lower the amplification of the instructors, but we still hear them, and it depends probably who the instructor is. The dumbbells were causing the thud noise, which is really, really annoying. A couple of weeks ago, I had a fever, and I couldn't even fall asleep because of
I'm
noise.
sorry, the what?
A couple of weeks ago, I had a high fever. I couldn't fall asleep because the thuds were so
What
loud.
was it? You said the dumbbells? Or?
Dumbbells.
So they're dropping weights then?
Dropping weights. So apparently they feel there's that they need heavier mats, and that's what's being installed. I think, from my standpoint, if they would keep me appraised of what they were doing on a more regular basis, I'd have a much easier time with it.
Yeah.
But when weeks go by, you're out in limbo. And to them, they don't really care. But it's weeks, and I care. My family cares.
Yeah.
That's really the issue I have. But it's not that they're not trying, or so
Sir,
they say.
I wasn't on the commission when I think you probably came for the first time. Just to clarify, do you live in the same building or adjacent?
I live right behind the
Right
house,
behind
right
it,
behind
okay.
that
Okay.
structure.
Okay.
Okay, and when they opened up, I mean, it was really loud. They had some issues they had to work through, and they kept saying they're trying to do it. They just recognized that it was the dropping of the dumbbells probably, a month ago, that was creating the thud noise. It really sounds like bombs dropping from a distance. So I don't like that. But anyway, I think they're trying, and that's the best I could say, but they really got to keep, as far as I'm concerned, me and appraised of what they're doing on a more regular basis, for sure. He came out here, I had an email, I sent him an email, Rory, the contact, and he said that he came out here, but in his email, I got a reply back that he's traveling and will have limited access to emails. He's in the Bay Area. He's right next door looking at the building. Who's a kid? So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any, I don't know, do I have to go through the formal public comments for this, or can I just, I'll just return it back to the,
You can bring it back to the commission
yeah,
for
I'll just bring it back
discussion
to
and
the
direction.
commission for discussion. And I guess one question, I guess, for staff and just kind of general. So if we were to, I forgot the exact language I used, but to call this back for a review, a use review, that would basically just entail us, like Orange Theory Fitness would come, present the project, and we'd sort of discuss the complaints that have been made and how they're addressing them, or?
Yes, and we would look at the commission would look at the use permit in its entirety. So within the conditions, there's this condition that you have the right to call it up for review at any time. There's also a condition related to noise impacts and compliance with the city's noise ordinance, and that would be another issue of compliance for them to have to provide explanation on, since that's been the nature of the concerns expressed.
Okay.
Yeah, and one reason I'd like to bring it back is we had discussions with them originally about the back porch and the back end of it, and I don't recall what their design was for that, but we wanted it to be, closed or when they were operating. And maybe now, since it hasn't worked, we have the option of saying, look, you've got to put a sound-rated wall in there. You've got to build a wall in there unless they need the fire exit, I don't know, or, but we'd have to know what the building code requires, but I'd love to, do something like that to really soundproof that room, and if they're going to behave this way, and I think that could make a difference, so. Or, and they were really, I thought, non-responsive to us when they came. When they got their use permit, they didn't have anyone here who could represent the company.
That's right.
We couldn't learn about it. They had a contractor who they'd hired who just, knew how to build stuff, but he wasn't representing the company. And we didn't learn much about their business at the time. I was very uncomfortable about the whole thing.
And I'll just say, I think one of the points of frustration, based on our email threads that we've had with the manager, is that he's based in southern Florida, and they don't have anybody locally to deal with this. And so as these email threads were continuing, I did remind him that there was this condition that this could be called up for review, that it is going to the commission as a discussion item. And did he have someone locally, or could he delegate to someone locally to represent the business? And I never got it. I got a response, but not on that particular issue.
If they're going to operate an exercise studio like that, then I think they should be in the CMX district, like the Ice Chamber, or over there in Emeryville or something like that. If they're going to operate one that is really loud, I think that it may not be an appropriate use for a Solano. Or if it is, then they'd better really soundproof that room if they're going to do that. And I feel that the nature of the business and the nature of the way they did their exercise operations was not represented well to us.
So from my perspective, I think we've heard enough and have enough information to
Call it for review.
and I'm not sure what the specific process is here. Do we have to move to direct staff, or?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be the
Okay.
appropriate.
And
Well,
does this get noticed?
Yes.
So the Sunnyside Cafe people and the owner of the building and all of those
Residents
will
on
get
Curtis,
noticed,
yeah.
noticed as well. Okay.
Unless there's other discussion.
No clarity. So we're noticing so that we could hear, haven't they already violated the tenets of what they're supposed to do? What are we going to hear?
If I'm,
So as part of that, so there's obviously been violations identified. This gets called for review. So these issues get discussed openly with a public hearing notice, and it's a formally agendized discussion for the commission with the opportunity to take action.
We can't take action without that meeting.
They have an
Right.
opportunity to present their.
They have an opportunity to
So,
present
I
their,
guess I'm already past that. They can easily soundproof this. This is not that difficult. Buildings do it all the time, and then they're not doing it, so.
yeah.
And what's the range of the action we could take once we bring it back?
I think you could give them an opportunity, some defined period in which to make an effort to correct the violations. This is something I want to work with the city attorney on, because it starts to get into code enforcement territory. But I think that's how it would work. They would have some very defined timeline for bringing the business into compliance. And then if they can't do that, I think that's when a revocation process could begin.
Can start the revocation process. Now, do we have any evidence that they violated the city's noise ordinance?
We would have to go out and take measurements with a decibel meter at the.
And we haven't done that.
I haven't done that.
Right. Nor have
What
I.
she came up about the decibel has to be violated for a certain amount of time, right?
Right, it'd have to, yeah, I'd have to.
Well, there's, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'm totally open to calling this for a use review and noise restriction compliance. I think we should do that so that we can kind of move through the process to get closer. I think what we all want to do. I would also, though, like before we actually have it agendized and meet to discuss it, I'd like to hopefully have staff be able to somehow monitor the noise levels so that you can, say you went out 2 or 3 times in the morning and did some noise measurements. I think that might help. And then the other kind of question is, within our purview, is it not only just to simply require a period for them to mitigate the issues, but can we also go further into like require design amendments to the structure, like as Commissioner Donaldson's saying, like to put in a sound-rated wall in the back, or is it just simply you have 6 months?
I'd have to defer that to our city attorney. I think you would have some discretion as long as it mitigates the issue at hand.
I think we would.
Yeah, I
And
think-
with respect to noise measurements and all that, we may, I talked to the city attorney about what proof is, but we may not have the numbers. We haven't measured when the violations were at their peak. But we have anecdotal testimony, which may be enough to say it's obvious that there were noise violations, that you've been violating the noise ordinance because you've been waking neighbors, because we have these reports. That may be enough. I hope so. Because if we have to do, noise measurements and like where and what kind of instruments and all of that.
Trying to move along. No, I think that all makes quite good sense, Commissioner Donaldson. Go ahead.
Well, they're already on record for opening before they're supposed to open, right?
Yes,
That's
that
a
was,
pretty big violation.
before the noise violation was committed, they actually opened at 5 a.m. instead of the required time of 6
Oh,
a.m.
there you go.
So
That's good.
what would be most helpful for me, instead of just having this kind of wide-ranging discussion about, is just to have a motion so that we can then come back and have a staff
a
report
formal
that sort of
discussion.
lays everything out and, would encourage staff to try to do more gathering of facts before then to the extent possible, but then we'll have an opportunity for you all to present anything additional that you feel like should be on the record and have an opportunity to hear from the applicant. I think that it's clear there's issues here that need to be hashed
Right.
out, so I would like to make a motion to direct staff to
We'll bring it back
how do
to
we do this
you.
to bring back
Yeah.
the Orange
With
Theory
some
Fitness
additionally requested information related
okay.
to the complaints.
for review of the conditional use permit. Yes.
A second.
Okay, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. Before we vote, Phil, you can add something if you think it'll add to this discussion, but basically you're getting what you need. So, so it's up to you. So if you want to speak, please do it.
Okay, as far as noise goes, you can't hear it that bad on the street because, so where my room is, it echoes with the little like outside area that they have.
Yeah.
So you hear it really bad in my room or the 2 bathrooms that we have that are along that like side of the house. So if you were to go out and take the noise levels, I would welcome you into my house to listen because the cops, like we had to call the cops and like he didn't hear it and I wanted to invite him into my room because, well, he did hear it, but not as bad as I was hearing and it woke me up and all that. So you're more than welcome to come in.
You have called the police.
Yes,
Okay.
but he just told us to
Well,
close our
it's-
windows.
Be good for you to tell us the date and time and that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
Be
please,
very good to have.
Yes,
Okay.
please
That's
notify
very good.
staff of that
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
And I'm going to leave it to staff to contact you if they feel it
Yeah.
necessary to gain access. Thank you very much. So there has been a motion. It's been seconded.
Excuse me, Chair, he's raising his hand
I'm sorry,
again.
did you? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
So there's been a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So if you're here for this item, Orange Theory Fitness 9-2, this item will be formally put onto our agenda in a future date to be determined. And feel free to work with staff until that time to provide them with any information that you think might be pertinent. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I'm going to move it back to the new business for our zoning code amendments.
Okay. Hopefully this goes fairly quickly. As we've noted and the commission has noted, there's some cleanup that needs to be done with our zoning code. Nothing that's particularly groundbreaking, just changes that would get us consistent with provisions of state law, good land use practices, and just clarifying a couple of sections of the code where there's been some ambiguities which have caused some issues on project review. Just a brief background, the current zoning code that we use was comprehensively updated in 2004 and adopted by the City Council. From time to time, the code does require amendments as part of broader policy implementation, consistency with state laws, as well as general clarification. We've had a couple of residential remodel applications, as well as some other policy issues which have highlighted portions of the zoning code which require refinement. So kind of a big picture snapshot, the FAR language, including the average perimeter height and the stairs calculation, that's up for discussion. There's an antiquated reference to spot zoning, which we caught earlier this year, which just needs to go. We also have a language consistency issue with public notification procedures where our standard in the code is inconsistent with state law. State law has a stricter standard, so I'll get into that. The accessory structure review threshold is set a little bit lower than the residential remodel threshold. I will also get into that and why we think it's appropriate to modify that. This wasn't, the last bullet was not part of the staff report, but it's something that we are proposing based on our practice. We want to have it codified that decks which are 36 inches or more above grade are subject to administrative design review. That's a practice that we've been engaged in for the duration of my time here at the city, but we've never had it codified in the code. And just for practicality, I think it would be good to have it there so that there's, you know, we're not accused of abusing our discretion.
Administrative.
Yeah. So the first red line change we have in here relates to the code provision around average perimeter height. And you'll recall at the last meeting, we had a project where we had extensive discussion on this specific provision as it related to modifying existing conditions of a property. And effectively creating a lower level space. So we have modified the language in this section to be specific to include existing grade conditions at the top of the exterior to the top of the finished first main story or above. We've also included a note that the existing grade of the property should not be altered to achieve an average perimeter height of less than 5 feet. So the intent behind this is to capture existing conditions so that if someone is going to apply this standard as part of their project, it's a pre-existing condition. The condition isn't being created to achieve additional area.
So, but this, can you comment now?
Mm-hmm.
So this doesn't affect the project we just...
It would not affect the project that was just approved, and they've passed their appeal period,
It's just
so.
dams that concern me about.
Right, going forward. And I know some of the commissioners had concerns about this language and that type of scope being pursued in the future.
It would affect a future project that had proposed that, though.
Yes.
Right.
But no, it wouldn't. Only if they plan on changing the grade of the property. That one didn't change the grade of the property. It just dug down.
Well, but it was basically altering the existing conditions and lowering the house into the earth. If they took the measurements from the existing.
They lowered the split level.
Yeah.
Lower part
So
of the split level to bring the average down.
Right, but this doesn't address that. It's the existing grade of the property around the outside of the house.
Thinking like a lawyer.
Except the driveway was lowered. So that might.
Absolutely it was.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I think I get what Commissioner Kent's
So
intention is.
we can finesse the language. I mean, the intent behind this was that based on that particular project, their existing average perimeter height exceeded 5 feet. They were altering the conditions of the property to achieve an average perimeter height of less than 5 feet. So my intent, and again, we can finesse the language, was basically to say that these conditions have to be existing. So if your average perimeter height already exceeds 5 feet, you're out of luck.
I mean, no, I think you're right on. It might just be simply adding language that speaks to, existing grade conditions and, existing grade and floor, finished floor level conditions.
Finished.
And then my only other quick thought was just,
Conditions.
depending on how technical we want to get, is any kind of language to lock in when existing grade conditions are established.
Yeah, I had a similar thought, and
I guess you could add, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm just
It's-
reading and thinking.
I thought maybe it's just a rephrasing of, the average perimeter height shall not be lowered to achieve, of an existing structure at the time the application is filed, or something to that effect, shall not be lowered to achieve the average less than 5 feet. So that was one thought, and I think you're right that it should specify at what time. My one other comment or question is that I don't think the intent of this language is to actually prohibit an applicant from doing that, from lowering the average height. It's just that if you do that, it doesn't help you establish the exception for FAR. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I would suggest clarifying that and just saying for purposes of this section or for purposes of calculating floor area ratio at the beginning of that. So it's clear that we're not prohibiting people from taking that action, just defining the exception.
Okay.
So, walk me through it then, because I'm not following exactly. So if I bought a house and I want to do exactly what happened last month, a few weeks ago, and I dug down another 3 feet to lower, and I guess let's say I had, right now I had 6 foot clear. And I dug down and dropped it down to 4 feet. How is this stopping me from doing that?
When you say drop down, you mean you drop the
I
floor?
dropped right now, the first floor is 6 feet above grade. All right, and the parking garage goes down 4 feet or something. I
That'd be
dropped the
fine.
whole thing down.
That'd be great. You wouldn't have to, then you would be allowed the FAR exception.
I would be that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Because the house would look, more of it would be underground.
So that's okay.
More
All right,
would be
all right, okay,
underground.
good. I thought
Wait, I'm
From
sorry.
the look on Ann's face, I don't think that was the intent.
Yeah,
I don't have very good poker face.
I think,
Maybe I don't understand your example.
well, I
I
mean,
think you do
It's
exactly.
okay to dig basements, is what I'm saying, and basements or.
Yeah, I guess we'll get into the nuance of this. If you were digging out and that existing house was staying as it was in that configuration and footprint, that's okay. What was proposed in the previous application was digging, lifting, and lowering to achieve that
How
average.
is Digging, lifting, lowering, not okay under this. I don't see that stopping that.
so I think, I think that was the language that Commissioner Jennings was getting at, is that we need to somehow tie it to either
So-
the average height or somehow tie it to
My,
the finished floor level.
Right,
Um,
and so
that-
Commissioner
so that-
Jennings' statement
My
in lieu of this was the average perimeter height shall not be lowered to achieve a height less than 5 feet. And
So-
I
and so
think that,
I think you can just add the word existing at the beginning of the third line from the bottom, and you have it.
existing finished floor?
Existing finished floor.
That works, yes.
Existing finished floor. What they did with the application we had concerns about is that they lowered the existing finished floor
Right.
to make the perimeter a tad under 5 feet. It was 5 feet 3 before, and they lowered the existing finished floor. And then it became 5 feet, or something into that, 4.5, whatever it was, 4.11, I can't remember.
Now that we've made this clear, I'm actually really against this. But now it's clear, I understand it. Okay, good.
And it's not that, and I think the intent is that we don't want to necessarily discourage that, but in terms of them somebody calculating their FAR,
Yeah.
we don't want to give them an exception by basically saying lowering your finished floor and so that it's all below ground, and now you can just have, as extensive of a basement as you want. It could fill the whole light. I mean, it could fill the whole lot if you want to.
Okay, oh, yeah, well, that's a problem.
And so,
Okay,
Okay, I
but
think-
it's clear now, I understand.
Okay. So then the next FAR provision that tends to give us headaches is the one related to the stair calculation. And so Chris, Jeff, and I took about an hour to finesse this language and thinking about its applicability. So our current language makes this reference to studies, atriums, and loft space, which are really pretty uncommon in Albany. So for the purposes of simplicity and also ensuring that the calculations are done correctly, we've crafted this language that the total exterior gross square footage of the footprint above and below the stairs shall be calculated for the purposes of FAR. Deductions shall be made for the actual stairwell footprint up to a 60 square foot maximum deduction from the overall FAR. And just to give you a little context, the issue that we've had some architects who'd give themselves the deduction on the front end rather than calculating it and then deducting out later, which has caused problems on a couple of projects. We had another project where one of the architects wanted to apply the existing language but wasn't forthcoming about the uses and the interior programming. Based on what was disclosed, it didn't qualify because it was conditioned finished space. So with this, we're trying to simplify, still allow for the deduction, but make it very clear. It has to be calculated up front. You get up to 60 square feet to deduct out, and it's from that stairwell footprint only.
my only thought about this, if we're just discussing here now, my only thought is that, I guess I just want to pose a question to the commission, is that I like the language. I think it clarifies where the 60 square feet comes from. My question is, do we want to get rid of those other things, such as an exception for double height atriums or double height rooms? Because in effect, that's what we're doing by clarifying this language.
Good question.
So, I mean, I think it's good to clarify where the 60 square feet comes from. I'm just not sure if we want to sort of have an additional.
Eric, as an architect, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, quite honestly, I just because of Albany's housing stock and the size of the projects, I don't find there's going to be many situations where you're going to have that double height situation. Whether I doubt you'll have it in the atrium or an entry foyer. It's going to maybe come basically like stairwells. Maybe if somebody has a second story landing that overlooks, but again, I think it's a really rare condition. So I don't know. I honestly, I don't quite have a position on this. I just was sort of thinking about it and wasn't sure.
That was the conclusion that we came to as well. We see that type of interior programming so infrequently.
Okay.
And right now, there's a question on another project of, how an atrium is defined and how the
Do we
interior.
have situations where there's 3 levels of stairs? And then, and how would that be at 60 square feet?
Well, when we have had it where the staircase is in excess of 60 square feet, whatever the resulting footprint is does count towards the FAR.
I mean, that was my only sort of thought about it. I think the language clarifies that.
I'm pretty sure I'm okay with it.
Hey, Eric, can I just ask just thinking about multifamily housing? Would it apply in like 3 or 4 or 5 stories or something like that if we can get that on San Pablo? Is that an issue?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, I'm just kind of going like out of practical experience. I mean, I know we have.
It's probably more in the common area where that would happen.
Yeah, it would be more, again, sort of walkways adjacent to stairwells.
So that wouldn't count if it's in kind of the common area?
Well, I don't know.
I think based on our calculations, it would, because if it's enclosed with,
Yeah.
walls and a roof, it counts as space.
So,
But this particular provision applies only to single-family
Okay, all
residential.
right.
Okay.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
That's the easy
Supplies
answer.
only single family, doesn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
all right, so can you explain this to me clearly, because this has always confused me and I still don't quite get it. So you're talking about the exterior square footage. So stairs outside the house.
No, it's the exterior footprint. So when FAR is calculated, and we sometimes have to remind architects of this, you're counting the exterior perimeter of the building, not interior dimensions.
Yeah.
So the total, okay, I see what you're saying. Take it from the exterior gross square footage. Okay, good, thank you. I was reading that word exterior, I was going, wrapping around. All right, thank you.
Just a general sort of pragmatic question. Are we tonight reviewing this to, again, just do a resolution of intention to the city council? We're not actually adopting these code changes, are we?
You're not adopting these code changes tonight. Your resolution of intention is the first step to initiate the changes. We then anticipate coming back to you in July, having run a newspaper notice with the cleaned up language, and then it would be another resolution formally making a recommendation to city council.
Okay.
And the city council has to read it, have a public hearing on it,
Right.
and then vote on it. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next proposal, it's pretty straightforward. We have effectively a spot zoning provision that's still on the books that,
Yeah.
for just good practices, we want to get rid of entirely. We've luckily never had anyone come in here with a petition signed by their neighbors to rezone an individual parcel.
So, and I mean, maybe I'm being dense, but this doesn't seem that straightforward to me, and I'm not actually reading it as spot zoning per se. I'm just reading it as how a zoning amendment is initiated. And so can you walk me through how you're thinking of this? Because I don't see this set of provisions as overriding the Planning Commission's role in reviewing zoning changes and the City Council's role in adopting an ordinance that, that would codify a zone change. That said, I haven't read this in context with everything else in the
Right.
code. So can you
Yeah, so for this
just
particular
clarify?
provision on amendments, it outlines effectively 3 ways to initiate a zoning amendment. This provision, which would allow someone in the R1 zoning district, if they have enough signatures within 300 feet of their particular property, they could submit that to the city for formal consideration for a rezone. And I do come across this from time to time in our Laserfish system, particularly in the 1950s, where people got those signatures and they got their property rezoned to a duplex or a fourplex or some other designation beyond a single family zoned property.
But without the City Council taking any action? Or is
With the city council taking action.
okay.
That's how they did things back then. More commonly, the other 2 provisions are the resolution of intention by the Planning and Zoning Commission or a resolution of intention by the city council to amend the code, and that's been the city's practice for quite a while. I've never had anyone submit at the counter
do this.
a petition signed by their neighbors.
Okay.
It's kind of an initiative that someone could do for a small area, and hence you call it spot zone.
But it still requires approval by the council. That's why, I guess that's the thing where I'm like, I'm not seeing this as spot zoning per se. I see this as maybe a funky way to initiate an amendment, but I don't know, from putting my lawyer hat on, that language doesn't really raise a lot of concerns for me. But I mean, that said, I'm also not opposed to removing it, especially if there is another opportunity for individual applicants to, and I don't think this probably comes up very often, but to initiate essentially by, coming to the Planning Commission and asking for, something to be initiated.
Right.
Right, because I don't think it's uncommon for zoning codes to have provisions that allow the applicant to initiate zoning amendments.
You don't think it's common? No.
I haven't had this experience.
I don't think it's uncommon.
My recollection is that this was in the, 1993 or the earlier
78?
zoning code.
Yeah.
And when we redid the zoning code in 2004, we left it in. We just, we didn't have much discussion about it, I don't think. We left it in. But, and I don't know if it's been used or not, but I think it was. I think Jerome Blank did a lot of this stuff.
Sorry, where did you think it came from, Doug?
And so to cast on that example, you'll recall we looked at a single-family house on a Solano commercial zone parcel, and we were all scratching our heads how that could have happened if it was a single-family residence. And chances are, at some point in the 60s or 70s, Jerome Blank circulated a petition, got the correct number of signatures, and created this non-conforming
He's a great
condition.
talker, just talked to neighbors into saying, oh, okay, sure.
So sorry, how far back does this go? The provision, how far back does this, you don't know? It goes,
At least to 1978,
Yeah.
which was the code that was used prior to
Yeah,
our
I
current
think it
code.
goes back to 78 code. I think so.
But what, but,
It was in the 1991 one, I think, or whatever one we updated in 2004.
you would still need to go through planning, as was mentioned, right? So even if it was a good talker, he still needs to convince the planning commission. Because my concern was if somebody buys all the property, then they're neighboring their own property, they can self-zone the spot, but it would
Right.
still
I-
have to go through.
Yeah, I don't see it doing that.
Right.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to be obstructionist about this, I just,
Well, I mean, and just the other point of context on this, when we looked at this, I think in January, Eric had asked me to forward this provision to the city attorney for a legal opinion, and Craig said, please get it off the books. So that was the other impetus for putting it on the list of refinement.
I mean, I think
And
Commissioner-
if you strike this, don't you need to strike the part, the B, initiation?
Well, so
there other
the
ways to
B
amend
becomes
it?
then initiation, B1 becomes city council, and B2 becomes planning and
Oh,
zoning
I see,
commission.
okay. So, okay, it's the beginning of this chapter, yeah. Just change the,
So what is
I mean, I think-
if somebody wanted to change the zoning of a spot, of an area, what is the process?
Generally, we don't have people individually coming in here asking for rezoning because it then triggers other issues related to general plan amendments, CEQA, that type of thing. And it's hard to make findings where, let's say you have a single-family residence and somebody says, I want it to go to an R3. You then have this R3 property that's surrounded by R1.
Yeah, well.
but if it's on the edge,
Yeah, but in the middle, or on the edge, right. The retail takes off on Solano. We need more retail. And we want to maybe expand it a little bit, maybe one spot, I don't know, I'm just throwing things out there. Is there a mechanism for changing a zone? There is.
the planning commission and the city council can amend the zoning map.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you
yeah,
go.
we also just updated the general plan, though. I mean, wasn't there an issue on, was it Santa Fe and Solano? There was a parcel over there that,
There was a parcel that, there was some error at some point in the past
Yeah.
where I think, there was an inconsistency where I think it was, I can't recall the land use discrepancy versus the zoning, but it was commercial in one and residential in the other.
but the general plan, which we just updated, you corrected that.
Corrected that.
That's
right.
And we have a pretty fresh general plan.
Maybe someday we'll be able to
we don't
rezone the waterfront.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But all this form-based codes and everything is what I'm thinking. So now we're looking more at, a lot of communities are looking at the shapes and size of the buildings rather than the uses. And so,
I mean,
And we're going to have that coming up at some point,
Yes.
right?
I mean, I think Commissioner Jennings' point is really on point, and I think with this sort of fresh eyes, re-looking at this again, I mean, I do feel a little more reassured that there are sort of fail-safes like Planning and Zoning Commission review and City Council review. I mean, at the very least, I wouldn't, if we do keep it on the books, I wouldn't be opposed to sort of making it a little more stringent in terms of the requirements for the resident-initiated amendment, maybe by for instance, increasing the radius to 500 feet from their property, similar to that we're doing for our notifications, and maybe even increase it from 50% to,
Make it really impossible.
maybe.
80%.
Let's just delete it. Let's just delete it. I'm okay
Yeah, I
with,
just
I'm okay with
assume
deleting it.
delete it. I mean,
Yeah.
we just went through the process with going back to the voters to change the parking thing, so it went through a more structured process.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say too, and
Could I make a motion? Are we
Yeah,
ready? I'll move.
Well, I think
We
there's,
still
I
have a
think
couple more
there's,
things, just a couple minor things to go through. So I think we're good on this.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's one more.
So this was the other thing, just briefly, the state law, Government Code 65090, sets a standard of 300-foot mailers. That's actually what we do for consistency. For some reason, it's in our code to do it at 100 feet, which is a lesser standard, so we're simply codifying what our current practice is.
Okay, yeah.
And then this was the last item, thresholds for design review. For some reason, accessory structures, which were less than 200 square feet are at a staff level, and if they're more than 200 square feet, they are a planning and zoning review. When you've seen accessory structures of that size, be it a single-car garage or something more elaborate like a studio or a home office, they come to you almost always on the consent calendar without discussion. Given that the threshold for design review to an addition on a primary residence is 400 square feet, we thought it would be best to make it consistent. And then also this mention of including the decks which are 36 inches or more above grade and having that officially be codified, even though that's been our practice for the time that I've worked here, where we do an admin hearing, send out the public hearing notices, and work with the applicant.
Well, 400 square feet on the back property line might be something that would be more of an issue to the neighbors than 400 square feet added to a house, right? So you're saying that if it's, you're saying if it's 200 square feet, accessory building goes in the back property, it just goes through permit, no review?
No, it goes through a staff level review, so we still go through a public hearing process.
But if it's, and you're thinking of increasing that to 400 square feet, still a staff review?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
Okay. But if a neighbor complains, then it might come.
Yeah, we have discretion. If it looks like there are neighbor concerns, we tend to bring it into this forum just because it's more formalized and it warrants
That would be my
a broader
concern, just there's
discussion.
some mechanism that it would be reviewed by a larger body.
Can't the zoning officer hold a hearing too?
Yeah, typically the zoning officer does, but if a situation arose where the neighbor has concerns about height and form and window placement and that type of thing, that's where we would bring it to the commission for more detailed discussion.
Just on the deck thing, I guess two questions. So if it's 36 inches above grade or more, then that's the community development director. So there's no height, there's no range there? It's
We
just,
didn't put in an upper limit.
I'm just thinking we had one project that somebody had a deck up 2 stories or something.
Yeah, and that got into actually a couple of issues. There were neighbor concerns on that, which was
Yeah.
why we brought it to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So that would be at discretion that he would, okay.
Right, and that we exercised our discretion in taking it to the commission to put it in a more
Okay.
formalized discussion.
And then just where does 36 inches come from?
Trying to think here, I think it's, so,
You need to have
you need to have guardrails?
safety railings of anything above 36 inches.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think-
California Building Code?
yeah, residential code.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, we're recommending that you adopt the Resolution of Intention 2017-03 to amend development standards and procedures, and then we would come back to you at a later date with the actual formal changes and do the newspaper notice and forward that on to council.
So now I can move.
Now you can move.
Yes.
I got it right on the screen, too. I move adoption of Resolution 217-03, a resolution of intention to amend development standards and procedures of the municipal code as presented by staff.
A second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion of intention, resolution of intention has been
That's
passed.
good. These are all good changes.
And then our next, almost there, our next item is from announcements, communications, and discussion, the El Cerrito specific plan study.
Yeah, just a friendly reminder that at your next meeting, we're keeping it kind of light because from 7 to 8, we'll have Sean Moss, who's the senior planner from the city of El Cerrito, give us a presentation on the specific plan and parking standards, and also an update on development in the pipeline along the San Pablo corridor.
Yeah, good. He'll talk about development in the pipeline, and,
Yep.
okay, that'd be good to know. I'd like to know about that. Okay, great. And he'll be there from 7 to 8?
7 to
Then
8.
Then we'll have other items after
Just
that.
one residential remodel.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Great.
Great. Thank you for doing that. I was interested in general, but I was particularly about their approach on parking that I thought would just be useful
Yeah.
for people to see.
That's good.
So,
Yeah.
speaking of form-based code, they're
Should we
also doing
bring our copy of the El Cerrito plan if we have
one
it?
is form-based code.
Yeah, if you
I
have
think
it.
I have. I think I printed it out. It was interesting. Okay, I'll try to remember to do that then. But he'll have slides or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And so Are there any other comments for that item? Our next meeting is June 28th. And with that, I will adjourn tonight's meeting. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have brownies left down here.
Yeah.
No.
We have-